Good morning, a pleasant day to all of you. I'm your host, Cito Beltran. Welcome to the program Agenda, and you are watching us via Cignal TV channels 8. And for high definition television, you can watch us on channel 250, and you can also watch us via facebook.com/OneNewsPH and on YouTube. And if you download the Signal Play app, you can watch us on the go. It's August 3, 2021. It's a Tuesday, and the weather is still gloomy, windy out here in Lipa. Medyo malamig po, but we are managing. And let's now go to the front page of the Philippine Star for today's headlines. And there you have it at the top. Nesty Petesio shoots for the Philippines' second Olympic gold. Households urge declare your own family lockdown, as in sabihan nyo lang walang labasan. Department of Health, walk-in vaccination should not be allowed. And the big headline for today, Metro ECQ curfew hours 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. Expect longer curfew hours in Metro Manila during the implementation of the enhanced community quarantine. MMDA Chairman Benhar Abalos said the new curfew hours would be from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. starting August 6. Currently, curfew hours in Metro Manila are from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. Inuulit po namin, ang curfew po, bawal lumabas sa gabi pagkagat ng dilim mula alas 8, ika-8 ng umaga hanggang ika-4 ng ika-8 ng gabi hanggang ika-4 ng madaling araw, 4 a.m. So, medyo mahaba-haba pong curfew yan, walang labasan, manood na lang kayo sa Cignal TV. Okay. Meanwhile, the Health Department reminded LGUs that walk-ins should not be allowed anymore. This is to prevent from vaccinations and vaccination sites becoming super spreader areas amid the Delta variant threat. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeire said LGUs must implement a vaccination appointment scheme, and all prospective vaccine recipients must be registered. Okay, magpatala, magpalista. And in sports, all eyes are on female boxer Nesty Petesio as she shoots for Olympic gold today. Pagdasal po natin si Nesty. Petesio will face Japan's Sena Iri at 12:05 noon Manila time. If she wins, Petesio will bring home the country's historic second gold medal after weightlifter Hidilyn Diaz nabbed one last week. And pati yata Paalam. Hindi po tayo nagpapaalam. Paalam, I forgot his first name. I think he will be competing at 9 this morning. Carlo Paalam. And please don't mind my mongrel Great Dane who is trying to be part of today's program in the background. Okay, wag ka lang iiri dyan. Okay, anyway, let's go on to today's quotation, and it comes from the book of Psalms, Psalm 91. Ayan po, pinagtrabahuan pa yan ng Team Agenda. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Ito po yung mahalaga. This is the important part, especially during this pandemic. Surely, He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will not observe with your eyes. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. Okay, you can continue to read Psalm 91 if you are one of those who needs encouragement, reassurance today, because in these trying times, we really need all the encouragement and reassurance. And I've always found, alam niyo po, kahit anong pagsubok, as difficult as times may be, I always go to the word of the Lord, especially pag nararamdaman niyo yung may kaba kayo, hindi niyo alam kung bakit. Go to the word of the Lord, because when you feel something off, that is sometimes the enemy, the devil, whispering fear and doubt in you. Okay, I'm not going to preach today because our first guest is someone we have inconvenienced. We have bothered. Sobra nakakahiya po. Nasa Germany pa po siya, kung saan marami rin siyang ginagawa. Let's find out what he is actually pursuing in Germany. We have Father Nic Austriaco, Father Nic of the OCTA Research Group. My profound apologies, Father Nic. I am robbing you of your few hours of darkness in Europe.
Good morning, Cito, and thank you again for the invitation to speak with you on your show. No problems. I have an awkward sleeping schedule anyway, so my mother will tell you I sleep at the weirdest hours during the day and night.
Okay. Wag lang niyan sabihin pinagligo kasi sa kwago yan si Nicanor. Okay. Father Nic, nandiyan ka na rin naman. Allow me to please let me take advantage. No? First of all, I know it's summer in Europe, pero anong oras ba nawawala yung araw dyan? Because the last time I spent summer in Europe, 12:00 na, may araw pa eh.
So I'm in the city of Paderborn, Germany, and the sun set about 9:45 today.
8 p.m., ano?
PM.
Very
And
late.
it will rise probably something like 5 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, so I'm only robbing you of a few hours. Okay, now what is it like to travel? That's a question from someone who watches the program, because none of us have any idea what it's like anymore traveling.
So I am a dual citizen. I have both Filipino and American passports. And so when I travel to the Philippines, I use my Philippine passport. But when I travel to the United States and to Europe, I use my American passport. And here in Germany, you are allowed to enter the European Union as long as you are fully vaccinated. I have my CDC card that I carry with me in my passport that indicates I have received my 2 doses of the Moderna vaccine.
Okay, Father Nic, a very important point that you were raising there, because a lot of people are confused regarding the policy of the European Union regarding vaccines. What do they mean by the ano ba yung sabi nila, if you have been vaccinated with a recognized vaccine? Kasi parang nagiging issue, anong vaccine yung sinaksak sa'yo?
So I have the Moderna vaccine, which is approved by the European Medical Agency. There is a debate ongoing as to whether or not the European Union will recognize the vaccination status of travelers who were vaccinated with vaccines that are not available or not approved in the European Union. However, the argument is being made that since many, if not most, of the countries of Europe are members of the World Health Organization, then they should acknowledge and recognize all the approved vaccines by the WHO. And that would include the Chinese vaccines that are being used in the Philippines at this time.
Okay, so it's still the debate, but does it mean that because I would like to one day visit my daughter, but I've been vaccinated with Sinovac, does it mean I will be denied entry kung Sinovac, or will they quarantine me for tralala period?
So I believe the Philippines is in one of the high risk categories. So I think even if you are fully vaccinated, you will be required to have some quarantine and testing requirements. And I believe that it's not that the European Union is going to block people who are vaccinated with particular vaccines. It's about whether or not you can avail yourself of the shortcuts that allow you to
Mm.
enter the country and avoid all the quarantine and testing requirements. Because I believe that there are people who are not vaccinated, and so as long as they're willing to get a test, and you can enter a test, go into quarantine, get multiple tests while you're in quarantine. I think you can still enter. I was able to enter, and then because I was fully vaccinated, I went right through the airport and onto a train to visit, to go to the city where I attended my conference.
Okay, which brings me to the next question. What exactly are you doing there? I mean, I know you're all over the world half of the time, but I'm curious. You're usually in the United States, but now you're in ano yun?
Paderborn. So
Paderborn. Okay.
I'm attending and speaking at a conference of young people to speak to them about human dignity and sustainability and the ethics of the natural law.
Ay nako, kung sinabihan mo lang ako, di sana isang buong oras na sa'yo na lahat.
So it's it's
Okay.
it's it's bioethics. It's something very different from what I usually talk about in the
Yeah.
Philippines.
Yeah, okay. Now, one would imagine that the conversations all over Europe would simply be about COVID-19. That seems to be a departure where you're not talking about bioethics, about human dignity. Uh, how different is the mindset of topics and concerns in the circle that you are going around now in Europe compared to what it is here in the Philippines?
So I think I can comment on not only in Europe but also in the United States. So I was in the United States last week, and I think one of the striking things about the United States is they have no more mask mandate, no more social distancing until a couple of days ago. But so I was in the Philippines for 4 months, and it was strange at first to remove my mask and to walk around very crowded places. Number one, for what you get a sense of is that for most people, especially in my home state of Rhode Island, the pandemic is over, and
Mhm.
so there is no everything is back to normal, and they hear about the Delta variant, but the Delta variant is far and in a foreign place. It's not really a concern. Here in Europe, we still wear masks. I have to wear masks indoors, not outside here in Germany. And during my conference, we all wore masks unless we were speaking, when we were allowed to remove our masks. The participants also had to undertake testing, antigen testing, every 3 days during the conference. So this will just give you a sense of the pandemic. And yet, of course, with these controls in place, we were able to discuss topics that went beyond COVID-19. Even though,
Mhm.
of course, they always return to COVID-19, especially when you're dealing with ethics, with human dignity and the common good.
Okay, would you be kind enough to give us a small sampling of the particular topic you spoke on? Because I mean, I have a few friends. Admittedly, we're in the senior division, so we're kind of now talking about ethics. We're talking about culture, about values. When you say human dignity, I don't know. Parang is it something relatable as far as the Philippine reality is concerned? And can you sample us with what you spoke on, Father Nick?
So, for example, one of the things I discussed on Wednesday in front of a group of 110 participants is actually to compare the cultural expectations for COVID in Europe and in the United States versus back home in the Philippines.
Mhm.
So, to compare the strong individualism here in the West as compared to the strong sense of family, the strong sense of bayanihan in the Philippines. So
Mhm.
we talked about that. We talked about the challenges of getting vaccinated, where here in the West, especially in the United States, you have increasing vaccine resistance, such that it is unlikely that the United States will be able to attain herd immunity in the near future. Now, I am actually deeply hopeful for the Philippines because what you are seeing in the Philippines is that vaccine hesitancy is slowly becoming vaccine envy, as many of our kababayans are seeing their lolos, their lolas, their ates and kuyas who are vaccinated and do not turn into zombies.
Mhm.
So one of the things people are saying it actually is not that bad, so I'm going to get vaccinated. So I'm hoping that this momentum will continue, especially as we enter into the ECQ and fight this Delta variant that is threatening our shores.
Okay, so continuing with what you were talking about the strong sense of individuality versus family, where did you bring that discussion to?
So we talked about when we talked about human dignity, we talked about how the human person finds himself always within the context of a community. Because I
Mhm.
think in the United States and in Germany, young people are told that they can be anyone and anything that they want to do.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I wanted to emphasize, and this is not just Filipino, but classical Western philosophy, is that the human being finds himself in the context of his family, in the context of his society, and that it's not just about ourselves; it's about who we are called to be in service of those around us. And the pandemic really, really highlights that because in the West, especially in the U.S., when people get vaccinated, they get vaccinated primarily to protect themselves. But the messaging back home in the Philippines is different. It's not just about protecting yourself, it's protecting your family and protecting the people,
Mhm.
all of us who are struggling to get beyond this pandemic.
Okay, now what? I don't want to put you in the spot. You don't have a crystal ball, but is there still a tomorrow? Will our tomorrow be the same normal? Because I'm always tempted to write a piece and to tell people if you think there will still be a yesterday normal, just kiss it goodbye because it's not going to happen.
Look, 100 years ago, during the Spanish flu, approximately 20 to some people say 50 million people died. If we're
Mhm.
talking about a global pandemic, 50 million people died, and that world was able to return to normal. And so we too will return to the old normal. We're not quite sure when this will happen. I am hoping and praying that it will happen sooner rather than later, especially at home in the Philippines.
Mhm.
But yes, I really do believe that we will return to the old normal. I mean, even now in
Is
the
that
United States, the old normal is there.
is that a good thing, Father Nick? Because some of my friends are saying, let's go back to the old better. The time where we had values, we had respect, we had uh, guardrails in our society as taught to us by our grandparents and parents, and let's go into family orientation, which is what COVID forced us to do. But I think the biggest apprehension of many people is if we go back to our old normal, as in acquire, achieve, accomplish, and possess, and it all becomes about me, me, me. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I absolutely agree with you, right? I am hoping and praying that this pandemic, um, let me back up, especially in the West, less so in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Many of my students, need to be constantly distracted from the deep and profound questions of life.
Mhm.
So their world is very noisy, their world is very busy, their world has a lot of people. And I think the pandemic forced them to deal with silence, to deal with solitude, to deal with isolation. And many of my students were unable to cope, which is why there are strikingly high numbers of mental distress that we are recording, not only in the United States but even in the Philippines. However, when I talk to my UST students, I notice a profound difference. I noticed that, one, their faith sustains them in this difficult time. Most of my American students, some have faith, some are ambivalent, some have none. And the pandemic, especially the lockdowns, have forced us to to look once again at ourselves, and hopefully not just to look at ourselves, but to look at the one who has created us, to look beyond ourselves, especially when we discover that the control we thought that belonged to us was actually a mirage. It was just a smoke screen. Tomorrow is not as certain as we thought it was. And I'm hoping that our society will change accordingly. Um, Unfortunately, I'm not hopeful for the U.S. because of the political polarization has simply ingrained so much anger and rage in the country at this time.
Are we not a close second to all of that, given the level of politics in the Philippines? Because I mean, I don't know. You seem to suddenly wake up when I asked you that question. Are
Well,
we not a close second to that?
well, I have had to learn how to deal with Filipino politics over the last 6 months, working with pandemic management and as a fellow of OCTA. And I have learned, for example, in a way that surprised me because I am so used to American democracy. I discovered that Filipino politics is pretty much run by families, and I had to discover who the families were and how the families relate to each other. It's a very different politics than the politics that is driven by party affiliation, which is what I'm most familiar with in the United States. But one of the things that you also discover is that because it's family, there is a certain loyalty and a certain camaraderie that is present that is not just institutional, it's actually personal. So, um, there are challenges, I have to say. I've been just setting up my laboratory. I've learned that it's important that I talk to people because talking to people opens doors that are usually closed. This is not what I'm used to in the US.
Yeah, because in the U.S. you apply, you buy, you order, and things are
I
processed and
order and
delivered.
it shows up. In the Philippines, I order and then I have to figure out who I have to call, who I have to request special permission for this to enter the country. So I'm learning. And my mother says I'm becoming more Pinoy day by day.
Okay, what were your learnings as far as that is concerned? Because after you answer this question, I want to go for a quick break and then ask you about your search for equipment in Europe and your future agenda. But what are your learnings as far as the initial idea of setting up a laboratory to create your own vaccine?
Well, I think one of the things is that in the States I have to deal with institutions, but in the Philippines I'm dealing with people, and people who take things profoundly personally, often. And so what actually happens is, after 30 years in the United States, I'm a lot more assertive and a lot more aggressive than I
Mhm.
think Filipinos are used to. And so I have had to learn, and my friends in OCTA have taught me how to push back a little bit, to pull back a little bit, so that um, I am not so forward as I may be because of the am part in the Phil am. So, so
Has anyone ever told you to your face, pari ka ba talaga?
more than that, well, first of all, I'm a priest, so it confuses everyone because I'm a priest and I'm a molecular biologist. And right now, of course, you probably have heard OCTA is being criticized in the media, and I'm a
Mhm.
little confused by this whole thing. Honestly, I mean, there is a
Yeah.
pandemic and we're entering ECQ, and I'm still trying to figure out why it's like there's this drama going on
Okay.
between OCTA and the DOH, which is
Let
very surprising for me.
let's go for a quick let's go for a very quick break, and when we return, I want to pursue that thing about the drama, etc. And Filipino system being quite personal and maybe immature. We'll go for a quick break here on Agenda. Okay, welcome back to the program Agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, and you're watching us via Signal TV, channels 8 and 250. And joining us once again is Father Nic Austriaco of the OCTA Research, who is in Germany right now. Okay, Father Nick, you were making comparisons. In the US or in the West, you deal with institutions. In the Philippines, you deal with individuals, with people. Now, and I also was saying, you actually said that everything becomes personal. Now, is this mindset? Because I had that thing recently when I was raising issues about vaccines, vaccine purchases, and suddenly the response was, well, Secretary Carlito Galvez is doing the best he can and is doing a great job. And I'm like, I wanted to cut in and say, I'm not talking about Galvez. I'm talking about the problem. And but anyway, but you reminded me of that. Where is the problem there? Is it because that's what Filipinos are, or is it something we inherited from somewhere? Do you think you could figure it out?
So I don't think it's just Filipino. I think it's Asian. I think when you have communitarian societies like the Filipino society, where your role and your position depends upon how others see you and how others perceive your value and your importance, rather than the merit necessarily that you pursued in a particular job, where your connections are as important as what you have done. In this
Mm.
kind of a communitarian society, where who you know and who knows you is so much more important, then I think what happens is that problems are actually not understood as issues, but they are extensions of people, and both success and failures. So that's something that I've just learned over the past year, right? That when you're dealing with a problem in the university, if there is not if the air conditioning is not working, it is actually someone's fault in a way, because
Mm.
everyone has a role and everyone has a place in Filipino society. So you just have to learn. I'm just learning how to deal with that and to appreciate both the strengths and the weakness of a system that is based very much on personality. I mean, you can see that in the national government. I hope to participate in my first elections in the Philippines in May of next year. I mean, I'm so excited to vote for president. I'm learning about all the politics, and I'm realizing it's not a party. There's no party that I'm going to vote for. I'm just going to have to figure out which people I want to elect into
Good, good,
office
good luck on that one.
here, and it's going to be a mess. I mean, the
That's
things
right.
I mean, there are no platforms. I mean, there are no party platforms per se. And then one of the things that's striking is that, I've been reading Filipino history and Filipino politics to prepare for these elections. It's striking how after the election, so many people will switch parties to the party of the president because we have such a strong presidential role in the executive branch in the Philippines.
No, it's like winning. It's like winning the lottery, really. The minute you win the lottery, you have so many relatives you didn't know, and much like Philippine politics. But just before we switch to another topic, uh, do you do the dance? Do you dance with the system in the Philippines? Sige, makisama na lang tayo, makibagay tayo, or should we make an effort to make people understand you have a job, you have one job, do it.
Well, first I have to pray because there are some things that I can do without losing my integrity, and there are other things that I cannot do. So I have to discern what things I can participate in that will not compromise the virtue and the grace that the Lord is calling me to. While there are other things I simply cannot partake of without jeopardizing my salvation.
Okay.
So much of it is prayer, really.
I just hope you are not praying that Lord kunin mo na sila. Uh, anyway, I'm just trying to wake you up this early morning in Germany.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay, but Father Nick, on the more serious matter, you are also, aside from giving a talk in Germany, you are also reportedly in search of equipment, etc., in developing your vaccine. What is the situation with your vaccine development plan, and what are you looking for in Germany?
So actually, no, I am not here for the vaccine work at all, actually.
Okay.
I'm here primarily for this conference and for this bioethics conversation. Um, the experiments back home in the Philippines are going well. I have assembled a superb team of colleagues from the University of Santo Tomas College of Science. And the entire team is basically holding the fort while I am away. Um, our mice are scheduled to arrive at UST in the next week. This Things are a little bit complicated because of the impending ECQ,
Yeah.
uh, and we're trying to figure out how to accommodate
Oh
things.
no, Shopee, Lazada,
Oh no,
Grab.
it's being delivered from Laguna. So, so the difficulty is that with the mice will have to be. We're getting 30 mice, female white-bowed sea mice, and they have to be delivered from Laguna. And the question now is, can they come through the NCR uh, border controls, right? So I think my colleague and collaborator back in the Philippines is trying to get the delivery this week before the ECQ is imposed on Friday.
Okay. Now, people might be wondering, why are you guys talking about mice and misses? Most people would say, well, what about the laboratory? What about the equipment? Because when I got the info or I was told that you were looking for equipment, I was wondering to myself, I mean, COVID-19 allegedly, if you follow the good side of the good version, emerge naturally. Many viruses emerge naturally. Why would you need such sophisticated equipment to come up with a vaccine against a naturally emerging virus?
So I'm a molecular biologist, and molecular biology is actually one of the most expensive branches of biology because we are examining some of the smallest structures of the living cell. And so in order to go deep into the cell to try to change the cell requires exquisitely fine-tuned not only machines, but actually chemicals that will allow us to program the cell as we wish. So, one of the things we have done, for example, in the creation of this vaccine candidate, is to genetically engineer. a probiotic yeast so that it will make, in a way that is it has never done, it will make a part of the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. And this kind of technology is actually quite expensive, um, especially in the Philippines.
Okay, are you not worried? And this just occurred to me. I don't know why, but are you not worried of the possibility of a Wuhan laboratory accident happening in UST while you're trying to find a solution? You might end up creating the next. Sino ba yun yung sa The Avengers?
A mutant.
Mutant.
No, so we do not work with any infectious virus at all. We do not work with any infectious particles at all. So there is absolutely no risk for recreating a lab experiment that would give rise to a new virus or a new form of SARS-CoV-2. And you have to keep in mind that UST, like every major university in the world, has very strict ethical and safety protocols that we have to follow in order to make sure that our work is not a hazard to the public. And I can reassure the public that nothing we do at this point will create any problems in the long run.
Okay, now who are you cooperating with? I presume that there would be some government oversight or coordination, or are you required as you develop this program and this product? Are you required to give updates, reports to the DOH, DOST, or any government agency?
So the University of Santo Tomas has its own safety board. And so
Mhm.
we have applied for permission to do the experiments that we can do. And I anticipate that our safety protocols will be approved in the next week or so, because they were approved by the yeast-based portion was approved by the university, the safety committee of the university in the United States, for where I have my American lab. We currently do not have any funding. We have not sought funding from the national government of the Philippines, and so we don't have any reporting requirements, since we don't require we've not received any funding from them at this time.
Okay. Well, after this interview, we will be bringing in Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeire for
He's
an update from.
fantastic.
Yeah. No. My question is, you mentioned that you were kind of puzzled by this play up of a drama between the DOH and the OCTA research.
Well, I don't think it's DOH per se. I think it's one
Yeah.
individual who is an advisor for the DOH.
Hmm.
And so it's not quite clear to me what the drama is about.
Hmm.
Again, I think the American side of me wants to just focus on the immediate challenge of a Delta surge in our beloved country.
Yeah.
Um, and yet, yesterday I was interviewed on ABS-CBN, and I was asked to defend OCTA, and I presented all of the reasons why I am absolutely confident in the work of my colleague, Dr. Guido David, who's the mathematician.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
have looked at his work, I have evaluated his work, I've compared his work with other calculations of the reproduction number, and they are comparable. So I'm not quite sure why there's so much criticism of the reproduction number. And as I pointed out, our models, both his and the models that I work on independently of him, our models work with each other, and they have basically predicted all of the major surges in the Philippines over the last 16 months. And
I think.
even this surge,
Yeah.
last week we were basically saying, look, there's going to be a problem, it's going to be a problem. And I am aware that the DOH is cautious, as it should be. It
Hmm.
uses official World Health Organization technical definitions. But I can tell you too that using these technical terms, which have both ordinary meanings, is confusing for ordinary Filipinos. Like my mother and my cousins don't understand when the DOH declares that we are a low risk country, this is very confusing to them, even though low risk has a technical sense. And the same thing with like community transmission. I appreciate the DOH has a definition of community transmission, but there seems to be a gap between the official definition and what most of our kababayan seem to appreciate about community transmission. So I get questions about like, I can see it spreading. Our hospitals are growing in capacity. There are images of people who are rushing to the hospital in Cebu. How can the DOH say there's no community transmission? And I say we have to be patient. They have an official definition. So in a sense, we have unofficial community transmission, and we are waiting for the official definition of community transmission.
Okay, now we'll go. I'll have to switch over to Usec Vergeire, Father Nic, but thank you. Hope you get rested, at least in your flight, and our prayers go with you.
Thank you, Cito. God bless you back home.
Okay, thank you. That's Father Nic Austriaco of the OCTA Research Group. And now let's bring in Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeire. Good morning, Usec. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, sir. Magandang umaga po sa inyo.
Okay, ibigay ko na po sa inyo yung pagkakataon. Dinig nyo naman siguro yung interview ko kay Father Nic kasi parang ang nangyayari dito, may sasabihin ka, may sasabihin yung OCTA, pagkatas napipira-piraso sa reporting at ang nangyayari, lumalabas, nag-aaway kayo. And Father Nic clarified that there is a technical definition for surges and technical definition for community transmission. So if you would, could you just explain where your pronouncements are coming from when you say there is no community transmission, etc.?
Yes, sir. No? So unang-una, gusto nating linawin lang po, no? Sir, I'd just like to clarify, hindi kami nag-aaway, kaibigan po namin sila Father Nic at yung grupo nila. This is just a professional that there are certain indicators that they use and certain interpretations, no, based on data that they do, na hindi po kami talaga pareho. Pero pag tinignan natin, iisa lang po yung datos na pinanggagalingan. Now, when we talk about community transmission, this is clearly defined, no, by the WHO, na nakikita natin wala na pong mga link yung pong mga kaso sa isa't isa. Meron na pong paglaganap nitong kung sakali variant na ito, like the Delta variant. So now, wala kaming official na evidence, sir. We only have 216 detections. Doon po galing sa whole genome sequencing natin. So what we are trying to say, officially, we cannot declare that there is community transmission because this has international implications. Pero ang sinasabi natin, we assume that there is community transmission already. That's why our response is already towards that direction. So hindi po namin kinakaila na wala tayong community transmission. Ayaw po namin lokohin din ng public, no? But we are telling the public also that we need to have official evidence before we can officially pronounce this. Because as I've said, this has international implications.
What exactly do you mean by international implications? Pasensya na, ngayon ko lang nadinig yan, Ma'am Usec.
Kasi po yan, classification po yan ng WHO. So ang WHO po, may classification sila based on country's level of transmission. So may 4 po na levels yan. At base po dyan sa levels na yan, sometimes countries will be classified as to high risk, low risk, or moderate risk. And dyan po rin binabase minsan ng mga bansa kung paano yung restrictions nila across their borders. So kaya kailangan po, meron kaming sapat na ebidensya para po ma-classify tayo ng ganon. So we need more so that we can determine extent and also we can determine really ito pong sinasabi nating transmission. But of course, these are all definitions. Kaya nga po tayo, ang kailangan nating pagtuunan ng pansin ngayon would be the response. And our response is, ay tinuturing na natin na may community transmission. Nandun na po sa level na yun ng ating response sa ngayon.
So, parang yung lumabas nga sa front page ng Philippine Star today na bagamat wala pa kayong masasabing actual na community transmission na talaga, yung paghahanda ay nakatutok, nakaumang na parang meron na. So we presume there is, whether or not there is.
Tama po yun, sir.
Okay, now yung nangyayari Yusek sa Cebu and other places, because I think that's what's confusing a lot of people. We, we are not definite whether we have a community transmission of Delta variant, but we seem to be having this inexplicable, if you don't mind my saying, surge of COVID-19 cases. So parang people are just kind of making the quick assumption na siguro Delta variant to, kanya sa Cebu yan hanggang sa labas nakapila na yung mga kotse, etc.
Unang-una po kailangan ma-realize ng mga kababayan natin, it is not Delta variant alone that we are battling with. We also have the Alpha and the Delta variants. At pag tinignan ho natin yung ating mga datos, we have seen that this Alpha and Beta variant have that level of community transmission already. So dito pa lang po, because these variants, other than the Delta variant, have that higher transmissibility characteristic also. So isa po yan sa drivers ng pagtaas ng kaso. But notwithstanding, hindi natin sinasabi na hindi Delta variant din ang kasama dun sa nagkukos ng mga pagtaas ng kaso. We had been flagging areas already since last week, and we have flagged Cebu actually, and we have recommended the escalation of the Cebu province and the Tri-Cities of Cebu to a higher community quarantine classification because we have seen that their numbers and the healthcare utilization had been increasing since the past weeks.
Yeah. Now, I remember in my last interview with you, Ma'am Undersecretary, you told me a group or an office that's in charge of making sure we have more health facilities or hospitals. Nadadagdagan na ba yung bilang ng mga public hospitals na tinatayo? Kasi evidently, the DOH needs more funding than the DPWH given the challenge and threat to human lives. Meron na bang magiging additional funding for more public hospitals? Because that's what worries me more than anything, Yusek.
Yes, sir, actually yung ating hospital development plan, meron ho tayong nakalatag no on anong mga kailangan natin ng mga facilities sa bansa. Kaya lang po ang ating Health Facilities Enhancement Program, that is HPEP, yan po yung budget natin para sa ating mga development projects for facilities ay hindi po nabigyan ng ganong kaukulang pondo no for this year. Ang atin pong ginagawa ngayon kasi tinatapos muna natin yung mga naumpisahan na project. And then we already have proposals for the succeeding years para makapagtayo na uli ng mga panibago. So we have already established different facilities in specific areas in the country through this program. And hopefully in the coming years, we will be given additional budget so that we can already establish some more facilities.
We don't want to get ahead of the DOH, but I, for one, and some of my friends are already talking about, bombarding the national government to just set aside the build program and channel whatever resources can be channeled to the purchase of vaccines and to the building of hospitals. Kasi sabi ko nga, aanhin mo yung damo kung patay na yung kabayo. Would the DOH be in a position kung ipasa namin sa inyo, DOH, ito na ang 100 bilyong piso. Hindi ba kayo mabubulunan naman if we fight for more funding for the DOH?
Well, in terms of this pandemic, creation or putting up of hospitals, hindi po yan immediate term solution natin sa ngayon. Ang kailangan natin is for us to further capacitate our existing facilities. Long term, yes, we will be very open to that because we need more hospitals, especially in areas in the country na kulang po talaga ang facilities natin. Now, as to the vaccine procurement, the national government already have this budget. But of course, for the succeeding years like 2022, syempre kailangan ho natin din magkaroon ng pera to procure more vaccines maybe booster doses will be included there already, maybe for children will be included. So kailangan po talaga ng pondo. So yan po yung pag-uusapan with the national government.
You mentioned USEC to capacitate existing hospitals. Honestly, no, marami sa amin hindi maintindihan yan eh. Kasi we always keep reading more hospital beds, increasing ICU capacities. And parang ang feeling na ibang, me for instance and other people, are we not simply just adding beds instead of we should be building more hospitals? Why do you say increasing hospital capacities? Are the present number of hospitals enough? They just need more equipment?
When you look at our hospitals currently, the inventories of our hospitals in the country, both public and private, about 60% of these hospitals comprises level 1 hospitals only. So the plan would be that we will upgrade this level 1 facility so that we can have higher level of facilities, and therefore, if you have higher level of facilities, you have the components like healthcare workers, equipments, and all, you'll be able to be part of that facility cadre where you can manage severe and critical cases. So in this time of the pandemic where the need is urgent and immediate, we are seeing that the creation or the setting up of new hospitals would be a long-term goal. But currently, we need to capacitate these hospitals that we have right now.
Because even in the barangay level, you do have health centers, and it would be faster, more responsive if you have 1,000 barangays who were given 10 beds each. That's already 10,000 beds. So I guess you're being mathematical in that concept. Now, yung about genome sequencing, because I understand, I don't know, I think it was Senator Sani Angara who pointed out that we are only able to test less than 1% of all COVID cases in the country, whether it is Delta variant or not. At this stage, does it really make a big difference? Because you started out by saying whether we have community transmission or not, we just simply have to act like we do. Now, does it make a big difference to know whether it's Delta variant or not? Kasi I remember interviewing you before, and you said, all of these variants mutate, and whatever it is, they essentially have the same transmissibility. Parang miyat-miya na lang may new model ba?
Yan talaga yung cycle ng virus, no? Yun yung national evolution niya. As long as there are hosts that they can, multiply, replicate, nag-mutate at nag-mutate sila. So when it comes to the whole genome sequencing, pag tinignan po natin, we need to go to the objective of why we do whole genome sequencing. When we do whole genome sequencing po kasi, the objective is not to, it's not a management tool for patients. So kailangan po maintindihan ng ating mga kababayan yun. Kasi parang sinasabi nila, April pa na-diagnose, May pa na-diagnose na may Delta variant, ngayon lang namin nalalaman. Paano pa namin makokontrol? Pero in fact, the expectation would be, kasi positive patients po ang whole genome sequencing, during that time na na-detect nyo na positive yung kaso, dapat na-manage po natin appropriately. They were isolated, and therefore we expect that you have already contained that transmission during that time. But of course, ito pong whole genome sequencing kasi, ang ating very objective of this is for us to determine first, nandito na ba yung variant. Pangalawa, ito po bang mga surges or yung sinasabi nating pagtaas ng kaso dito sa ating bansa, caused ba yan ng variant na yan? Pangatlo, yun po bang pagdami ng mga severe cases sa ospital ay caused ba rin ng variant? Pang-apat, yung mga bakunado ba na nagkakasakit, caused ba yan ng variant? So these are the things why we do whole genome sequencing, and not really for us to use this for managing cases. So again, let me reiterate, kapag na whole genome sequence po natin, the expectation na manage na po yung pasyenteng positibo nung initially detected siya as positive.
Well, that makes complete sense, no? Because we can argue and argue, but at the end of the day, the priority or the presumption is that we treat whoever is sick, regardless of whether they got stabbed or they got shot. Kumbaga, gamutin mo dahil may tama. Now, as far as the Genome Center is concerned or the DOH is concerned, does it still make sense to invest a lot of money for genome facilities, given the fact that it's not it's more detective work than really a preventive tool?
Definitely, sir, no? So we cannot really say na hindi pa rin siya preventive tool, no? Because if we will be able to sequence and then we'll find out halimbawa po nakakaapekto pala ito dun sa mga severity o nakakaapekto pala ito dun sa bakunado, meron ho tayong magagawa to prevent such occurrences. So we are now trying to expand our Philippine Genome Center that we will have strategic laboratories in certain areas of the country. So ang una po nating step is to capacitate UP Visayas and UP Mindanao para meron po tayo doon mas accessible sa ating mga regional offices. Pangalawa po natin na step dyan is to have sub-national laboratories, and that would be maybe next year na po. Pero ngayon, immediately, ito pong UP Visayas and UP Mindanao, because there are existing equipments already, ang kanila pong mga personnel dyan ay skilled na rin, they were trained already. So we just need to capacitate a little more and then we can already start. So sana makuha na po natin yung pondo so that we can start working on capacitating these two laboratories.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Usec. I know you have an emergency meeting to attend to, and I think this has been the best interview I've had with you so far because it puts common sense behind the issues, and mabuti nga nagkasunod kayo ni Father Nic para maliwanagan sa mga nanonood na walang away dito, walang issue dito, may iba-iba lang tayong mga concerns and directions. And we hope that the DOH and the leadership of the DOH continue to be blessed with wisdom by the Lord. God bless you, and please stay safe, stay strong, and stay healthy. Thank you very much, Usec.
Maraming salamat po. Thank you.
Okay, that's Usec Maria Rosario Vergeire of the DOH. Medyo pasensya na kayo if it seemed abrupt that I had to let the Usec go because I take the word emergency meeting seriously, and especially in this particular week where, naku po, mag-ingat po kayo pag kayo may mga kadil, may mga kausap na mga government official, health official, kasi para kayong nakikipag-touch finger sa karayom. Very sensitive karamihan sa kanila kasi karamihan sa kanila walang pahinga. A lot of them barely have any sleep. And I think that applies to many of us. We're all under stress, under duress because of the COVID-19. But it's good that we had that interview with Usec Vergeire because very valid point, as well as with Father Nic Austriaco. When we talk about genome sequencing, because politicians saying, it's too late, it's too slow, too little. But her point, Usec Vergeire's point, is very correct. Whether it's Delta variant or not, you're supposed to treat any suspicious cases, any suspected COVID cases, and the determination of whether it's Delta variant or not, hindi nga makakatulong yan sa mga politiko na magamit yung kanilang emergency funds. It's unnecessary, but treat the disease whatever type it is, and that's important. Now, as far as the hospitals are concerned, I, for one, have been a nagger. Kasi ako po naniniwala, I really believe that many hospitals are needed to be spread all over the country. Because I saw that when I was in one of the many times I've been to the heart center as a patient. May mga pasyente pang galing Fiji yata yun or some island grouping na they were having their treatments in the heart center because mura and affordable. But, we need more hospitals. But Usec Vergeire pointed out that it takes much longer. Totoo nga naman, matagal kumuha ng pondo, hard to get funding, legislation, funding, and then the bidding, and whoever is supposed to build the hospital, whether it's the DPWH. There are many health centers, clinics in the barangays. If you have 1,000 plus barangays and you gave them one bed immediately, one room just for COVID treatment or whatever, that's, 1,000 beds. If you gave them 10, that's 10,000 beds. So anyway, we've run out of time. It's 8:59, and I would like to thank you for joining us. I thank the Lord for giving us a great show, even if we were really biting biting our nails last night, Arvic, Tolentino, and the team. Thank you, Lord, for this time. And please continue to watch us here on Cignal TV, channels 8 and 250. And for the latest news, I'm Cito Beltran, and we are One News.